Once upon a time, in a faraway land,
What are fairy stories?
The strange and wondrous place where nothing is as it seems.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest?
Fairy is a perilous land.
Before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep
It
well.
is the place you visit
A world
in your
of
dreams.
myth and magic.
when the clock began to chime
Evening
midnight,
stars sail down through the
A
sky.
mysterious voice began calling to the sad
She
princess.
pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell on the
In a
small
trance,
white
she
finger.
followed the haunting
And peered
sound
into
of
the
the
hollow
winding
tree.
stairway to the top of the
You
tower.
can read along with me in your book.
she waved her wand and said the magic words.
Let's begin now.
Well met, witches! We're gathered in circle tonight, joined by a very special guest, an entrepreneur, a Discordian, a chaos magician, and someone I'm proud to call a friend. Come on down, Thumper Forge!
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Thumper, what would you like to tell everyone about yourself?
I mean, you hit the high points. But yeah, I am a witch. I come out of a traditional Wiccan background of Gardnerian, and also I'm an initiate of the Minoan Brotherhood. And then in my free time, kind of my day-to-day practice is rooted in chaos magic and Discordianism. And I've been writing a lot lately for people who have I always assume nobody's ever heard of me. So, hi, everybody. I write a blog for Patheos Pagan called Fivefold Law. And then almost a year ago, I had my first book come out, which was Virgo Witch, which was co-authored with Ivo Dominguez Jr. And next year, at some point, I will have a book out on chaos witchcraft.
Wonderful. We're so glad to have you here today.
If I remember anything else suddenly, I will just blurt it out.
And I think that answers my follow-up question already, but is there a specific way you describe your practice or your witchcraft overall?
You know, it's I wouldn't say eclectic per se, but it is very rooted in the idea of chaos magical theory, which is the gist of it is basically using belief as a tool. So shifting beliefs around in terms of how I approach magic or how I approach witchcraft. It's got a very strong Discordian current to it. Discordianism being the modern worship of the Greek goddess Eris, the goddess of discord. So it's very silly at times and very irreverent at times, but it does seem to work for me. So I haven't set myself on fire and I'm not bleeding from the eyes. So I just keep moving forward with it.
And we also have with us a regular circle member and creator of AB's Witches Journal, Anibal Rodriguez. Hi, AB.
Hi, everybody. It's always great to be here. Yes, my name is AB. Actually, it's Anibal, but AB is easier to pronounce. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to be back. It's been a while since the last time that I had the opportunity to participate. So this is always great. Thank you.
We're very excited to have you here today while we discuss a tale that Thumper suggested, which is The Tinderbox by Hans Christian Andersen. The Tinderbox was published in, I believe, 1836, and it was the very first fairy tale included in his first collection of fairy tales told for children. Thumper, what made you choose this tale for us?
You know, I remembered it from my childhood. Specifically, I remembered the 3 dogs in the fairy tale, the image of which has always stuck with me. I had a big collection of Grimm and Anderson fairy tales growing up that I think had been a Christmas gift one year that was illustrated. And the picture of the dog, or at least one of the dogs, was just terrifying and just burned itself into my head. So that's all I remembered about the fairy tale. And when I mentioned it to you, I was just like, there's this one fairy tale about dogs with big eyes. And I just remembered it as that. And then in rereading it as an adult, I was, wow, this is a much darker and nihilistic than I remembered as a kid. But it still remains, even as an adult, it still remains a favorite.
Hans Christian Andersen, there's a lot has been published about his life. And so the nihilism might make sense if we look at some of the perhaps outcast feelings or status that he experienced during his life.
Yeah.
The story you shared also has a lot of elements that it shares with other fairy tales. One of the first that specifically came to my mind was a story by the Brothers Grimm called The Blue Light. And I might refer to that a few times as we go through the story. So reading it, were there any specific elements that jumped out to either of you?
You know, for a children's tale, it really starts off hypersexualized.
Yes.
You know, this soldier is walking along and meets an old ugly witch on the road. And she immediately compliments the length of his sword and the size of his knapsack and says that he is every inch a soldier. And I was just like, that's a lot. Like, that's...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in a modern context, you know, we had Animaniacs, right? Where there was a lot of adult humor tucked into the story for children. So, but that was the first thing that jumped out of me, was that I did not remember all of the innuendos as a kid.
Yeah, I was imagining that scene acted out in sort of like a burlesque comedy manner.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as it gets into, there's the big hole you need to jump into. Like, it's just one thing after another. And then that sort of goes away as we move into the tale itself. But it starts off just this very lascivious.
Yeah, it does start off very sexual.
That's a really good hook. He did a good job with that.
Yes, certainly. The first time is the first time that I read it, and I did read it a couple of times. I do have to say that the similarities that I found in the story is very. There are elements that I can see. I have the book 1001 Night, I think that is the name. I know it in Spanish, so sorry if I miss.
No, that's the name.
You know what I mean. So I see this. I see these motifs very similar to Aladdin and also to Alibaba and the 41 Thieves. The genie aspect of the element of going to a subterraneous space and find treasures and an object that further down the road we get to see that is able to make our wishes to an extent come true. And also the aspect of marking down the doors and all of that. So I did see that when I was reading the story, I was quite happy to see that, it's very similar to these stories in from this book. I do admit I did not catch like the sexualizing aspect. What I was happily surprised was that it was a dark story, dark in the sense of our hero is not necessarily too heroic. It's not a black and white, very moralistic or ethical story. It's a more like we do what we have to do in order to achieve, to get our victories. So it was very interesting. Yeah. I have more elements to say, but yeah.
Well, and there is some nuance to the hero or anti-hero, because he starts off, he's very greedy, he's very callous, and when he's able to find wealth, the first thing he does is give money to poor people because he knows what it's like to be poor. But at the same time, he does not seem to value human life very much.
Yeah.
It's in terms of like the wealthy, the royals, even the witch who has power. He doesn't value those people very much, but he very much values other people in poverty.
But I do think that it's important to take in consideration that the first lines of the story is like, hey, the soldier is returning from war. He has seen violence. He has seen pain and death. So I think that also reinforces the reason of why he makes or takes such irrational. I will say rash decisions. That's why he's willing to, which you're not telling me anything, heads off.
Yeah.
So he has, it's not cool.
Yeah, he's got a little PTSD then, maybe. I mean, they wouldn't have had that back, or they wouldn't have had that understanding back then. But yeah, I can see that in terms of those rash reactions of I got to make a split decision right here and now, and I'm not getting what I want, so off with her head.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about multiple things you both brought up. That's a really great point, AB. The fact that it says in the translation I read something about the soldier had seen war or been to war. And there is a common element in many of the Grimm tales also that begin with a soldier who's either down on his luck or has finished service and now he's done. But it goes back to, I think, an older association between warriors and soldiers in warrior tales and wild men, which we can see like in old medieval stories about Merlin, where in some of them he was a warrior who got sick of the killing or was traumatized and then ran into the forest and became mad, became a wild man. And that's a theme that kind of goes on where sometimes when we hear about soldiers, it's also pulling in this wild man archetype as well. This one, he had his knapsack and stick. I don't know that we get a full wild man portrayal, but we definitely know he's seen some stuff, right? And then in the similar tale, The Blue Light, he ends up asking the witch for lodging. So he stays there a few nights before she asks for his help. So, I mean, right, they fucked, you know? Yeah. She says, "You're every inch the soldier, and you're doing what soldiers do." And in both tales, she asks him to descend into the earth to retrieve something. And so in the tale we're discussing today, she asks him to descend into the earth to retrieve a tinderbox that is valuable to her. And he enters through a hollow tree where he uncovers a chest and a dog with eyes the size of saucers or teacups sitting on the chest. And he seems to be a pretty friendly dog.
He's kind of the worst guard dog ever, because there was, at least in the translation I read, there was the witch gave the soldier her blue checkered apron, and he was to lay that on the ground, and in order to get into the chest, he had to put the dog on the apron, and then the dog wouldn't attack him, but he still had to, like, that's something that just threw me off. Maybe I'm being like hypercritical, but I was like, you pick up the dog and put him on the apron. The apron's not doing anything. The dog let you pick him up.
Yeah.
And that was just odd. That just threw me off.
It sits down where you set it. That's its setting.
Yeah. Go night night.
But the eyes are such a unique detail that I don't think have parallels in at least any of the stories that we've compared the story to. And the fact that he sits on the chest, which I think is pretty great. Any thoughts about these details specifically?
I think the eyes, like, the only thing that really jumped out at me about them in this rereading, as a kid, I just saw it as scary. As an adult, especially as an adult who practices witchcraft, I do see that protective element of them. Like, the bigger the eyes, the more valuable whatever the dog is sitting on. Just in terms of, like, something averting the evil eye or something offering some kind of protection to the treasure.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Considering the dog itself is useless, at least he's got the big scary eyes.
I mean, it might be useless right now protecting the chest.
That's true. The dogs do come in handy later.
Yeah, I mean, they end up eating the queen and the king and everything, and the judge. So, okay. So for me, definitely the elements that I was seeing in this one. The lady gave him like his apron, right? And it was a blue checker apron, I think. I think that it was blue. Yes. So maybe I'm overthinking it, but it kind of reminds me of the same way that the toreros in Spain, when they are like, I don't know what word it receive in English, but in Spain there's like a sort of traditional sport where a man is using like a red flag to make the bulls pursue this red flag element.
Okay.
It kind of reminds me to this, that the blue checker apron, it was like an element of distraction. And I find very interesting that in the same way that the apron was blue, the dog's, the bigger element of the dog was the eye. And it kind of reminds me to the Nazar, the blue eye of amulet, protection amulet, a protective amulet for against evil eye. And again, I keep returning onto these Arabian element, again, Aladdin and Nazar, which is very common in Arab's country, in Jewish Israel. This is a very common amulet in those sections. So that was like the sort of connection that I was making. Maybe I think that it also was a trial aspect of the man not letting his fear overcome his desire to go for the chest. And also, maybe I also was thinking that maybe in the future, that's also why the dogs, when he struck the tinderbox, the dogs came, because he did not gave into the fear for them. He passed a sort of trial, if that makes sense, and that trial gave him not only the opportunity to dig in the chest, but also the opportunity to call onto these familiars, let's say it like that. So it was very, very cool on that aspect. So for me, the eye aspect was maybe evil eye, maybe an element of "I'm scaring you, bro." And it's so funny because in one of the dogs, I think that is the second one, he said to the dog, "Let me see, you had better not to look at me in that way. You will make your eyes water. Like, relax, it's all good. I'm just going to." Come over here, doggo. I'm going to place you in this apron and I'm going to grab my gold and you'll be fine. It was hilarious. So, yeah, that's like the type of things that it reminded me too. Even as witches, sometimes we go through these trials and we think that are going to be terrifying, and it might be terrifying firsthand. And then when we get there in that spiritual trial, it was not as terrible. The first time that I called the devil, I was like, "Oh my God, the devil!" And then I was like, "Oh, so this was everything. This is what the Christians are scared of." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's how it rang in my head.
It is interesting when you mention specifically the color blue in the eyes, because in that respect, him having the blue checkered apron as a symbol of protection, like, would alert the dogs that he is somebody safe. And the way he interacts with the dogs, because he tells one of the dogs, "Oh, you're nice," and then picks him up and puts him on the apron. And he tells the other one, the version that I have similar to yours is, he tells the dog with the biggest eyes, "You're going to strain your eyesight if you look at me like that." And then he just picks him up. So everything, the apron has a protective element to it, but it's almost like the guy himself doesn't need it because he's not scared of the dogs anyway.
I mean, I think that he was also trusting in what the witch indicated, which is also why I was a little bit so bothered of his reaction towards the witch.
Yeah.
Because she was like, "Hey, I just want you to go grab the money. Like, I'm protecting you. You'll be fine. Just give me the tinderbox that it was from my grandma." And he was like, "Okay, what is this about?
Yeah.
That's not your business."
Well, that's funny. That's when he questioned, like, he followed orders. He was a good soldier. He followed orders without questioning up until he actually got the item the witch wanted.
Something I thought about the apron as well was that, one, the checker pattern. It's just so unusual that he gave us that specific description. But the checker pattern does make it sound a little bit more like a symbolic net, and so something that could trap. But also, like you mentioned, the taunting of the bull, the idea is to enrage the bull. And so there's the color symbolism of red with that. Whereas, like, peace water is artificially colored blue. So we have blue as this protective and peaceful association element with it.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought is we don't know that the dogs actually had any job of guarding anything. Like, they might just live down there, or, well, they do live down there.
They're just sitting there.
So if you saw it and were afraid, of course, I think that would be the most logical response when you see something like that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it turns out they're just big fluffies.
Yeah. And that in that respect, the blue checkered cloth is just sort of, it's basically telling the dogs don't go anywhere. It's like putting them in their crate.
So on his return, initially he actually forgets to fetch the whole point of the journey, which is the tinderbox. But he goes back. Oh,
no, I don't think we mentioned the riches, where the smallest dog, who had the eyes the size of saucers, was, when he moved that dog, that chest was full of copper, and he filled his pockets with copper. And then he got to the second dog, whose eyes were big as mill wheels. And when he moved that dog, that chest was full of silver. So he threw out all the copper and got the silver. And then the last dog, whose eyes were described as large as the round tower of Copenhagen. And when he moved that dog, that chest was full of gold. So he got rid of all the silver. So when the witch pulled him back out, he was laden down with all this, with, like you said, with all the riches.
As towers.
I just didn't want to leave that part out. Sorry, I didn't read it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually forgets the tinderbox that she requested. So he goes back down. He goes back down, gets the tinderbox, asks why, as you mentioned, AB. He asks why it's so important. And she said, it's my mother's, and she forgot it down there. And when he's back on safe ground, he uses his sword to chop off her head and decides to keep everything for himself. He still has no idea of what the tinderbox may be other than a usual little box. But he's rich now because he has all this gold, and he starts on sort of a financial saga of ups and downs, which reminded me a lot of a blog post or something that came out a number of years ago from Aaron Leach about being sick of being asked, if you're a witch or if you're so powerful, why aren't you rich? And so the majority of the blog, the gist is like, I spend more time studying the craft and magical texts than I do the stock market or financial strategies.
I had somebody ask me that one time where I had done sort of a impromptu GoFundMe on TikTok one time. And this was a couple years ago. And it was one of those months where all the bills landed right between the paychecks. And I do readings and was able to, have something to offer, but I was like, hey, this would be a great time to book readings with me so I could have a little extra income and cover all my bases. And nobody was like mean about it. But one person was like, well, but you're a witch and you have this great job. And I'm just wondering why you wouldn't have money, why you would need to, do a side hustle. And I was like, well, I do have a job. But it's a great job, but it is a job in retail and it pays retail wages. And, sometimes, and I do a lot of money magic, and sometimes the money magic is for the store. And sometimes the money magic is to put me in the right place where money can come in. And sometimes the magic is to get the courage to let people know, hey guys, I'm struggling. If you want to help me out, I'll do some readings for you. But there is that idea that if you're practicing witchcraft, money magic and money should be flowing in. And sometimes it does, but sometimes the magic is there just to hold on to what little you have to prevent an emergency where you have to spend it all right then and there. So that was just one of my money's my trigger.
No, that's it. I think that's a big part of it. Oftentimes, if we are using money, if we are using magic for material means, it's when it's close to the last resort and you're getting enough to have your needs met, but it's not something that's going to bring in like a rainfall of money.
And there's, there are probabilities to keep in mind when it comes to money magic, especially sudden windfalls and the idea of the lottery. A friend of mine told a story one time that was related to her by somebody at an auto shop, because she was in the waiting room. She walked over to see if her car was ready right when they were about to call her name. And she said, oh, that's a useless psychic ability. And the person behind the counter said that one of their other customers is a truck driver, and he was driving cross country, and he suddenly had this overwhelming urge to buy a lottery ticket. So he pulled over and ran into the first gas station he saw, and the person in line in front of him won $1 million.
Wow.
And that can sort of be the money magic as well. We're dealing with a lot of chance and a lot of probabilities, and every spell has an impact, but it's not always going to might make things more probable and more possible, but it's not a guarantee of, that that money is going to rain from the sky.
For me, for example, my opinion in regards to money magic, it is something that definitely bothers me. And one of the reasons of why I also try not to stick too much in social media at the time to talk about witchcraft, because my approach with social media is like, hey, this is my experience. This is what I'm reading. I'm having funsies. don't come to me like to create a fucking philosopher's stone. Like that's not what this is about. But I do remember in particular a one time I was in TikTok, and this was this person saying, "Hey, I'm creating this money oil, and I am creating this money working spell. And if you buy the oil, well, I know that you are going to get $500, but if you buy the entire kit at $100, you are getting like 3,000." It was something that it was the guaranteed aspect, and maybe or they are the best fucking witch in the entire world, or they are fucking insane. And I think that more insane is the people that is spending the money getting those kits.
Yeah.
My opinion with money is so complex, because in the past I think that many witches, when they were talking about prosperity, money was related to literally harvesting, fructifying their harvesting fruits and vegetables and the land, and making sure that their cattle was having multiple kids, like it was a different element.
Yeah.
And even when we go to these grimoires and we find these familiars and demons, like, hey, you're going to find the treasure here, something like that, it's a very complex and very fantastical type of element, very cultural, of course. So
Yeah.
I really find, I'm not saying that there's not spells that might influence opportunities like this, but if you are coming to magic to become millionaire, I think that you have more chances becoming an actor within the witchcraft community, a pretender, than a proper witch.
Yeah.
I've met more witches lacking money than having a lot, and I was just living in there.
Well, and no, and you make a really good point, because a lot of magic, in terms of what happened with our predecessors, would have been more about day-to-day survival. It would have been ensuring that, like, a money spell would have been ensuring that I have enough money to survive. Prosperity would have been, like you said, the crops and the cattle, along with, the general health of the family or the household. And, ceremonial magic back then, when we think of like the old grimoire traditions and everything, it very similar in a way to what we see within the New Age industry sometimes, because, in the New Age industry, it's like, oh, if you buy this $400 crystal pyramid, it will ensure wealth. Well, if you have enough money to blow on a $400 crystal pyramid, you're doing fine. But the New Age industry can, is like, no, but think of how much more wealth you have. And I have known people who are like, oh, I ask my spirits to give and they provide everything. And I'm like, but you also work in oil and gas. Like, you have a 6-figure income. So, like, I'm sure the spirits are helping, but your job title helps as well. Versus, like, if a ceremonial magician is going to get all these very rare ingredients and, get the proper ritual robes and do the invocations to make the money, they already have the money. Like, they have the resources to spend on a spell to get more money.
I fully agree. It's something that I do agree. When you were mentioning the money aspect, it definitely is. When I talk from my experience, and it's something that I always mention. Hey, as an immigrant, the whole prosperity manifestation money situation doesn't ring a bell with me, because in South America that doesn't work. Like, there are so many countries that it doesn't work. So that on that. I do want to mention though, and obviously as an excuse to circle back to the story,
to the actual topic.
When you mentioned the gold aspect, I did find very interesting that I know that I'm returning a little bit on detail. When he went through the tree, which it was like, oh, cool, he's descending. Very interesting. We see this motif of number 3. 3 doors, 3 dogs, 3 chests, 3 different type of coins. And ironically, the doors already had a key. So the witch say like, hey, don't worry about the doors. The door already have a key. Just open the door and go through the door. And finally, he was so mesmerized by the treasure, even though he knew that there were going to be 3 doors and there were going to be 3 dogs and 3 chests, most likely with different type of coins. He still grabbed all the coin of each chest, put it in his pocket, all copper. Then he went to the next one. I think the silver is better. You know what? Let me empty all the copper and put all the silver. And then again, oh, I think the gold is better. So I did find very interesting that he did not think that too well.
Well, and it's, yeah, he's so like, when we think about what he's gone through at this point, he agreed to jump into a hole in a tree with a rope tied around his waist that a witch is holding. And he is encountering dogs with freakishly large eyes, and nothing phases him, but he freaks out when he sees the gold. And it's funny, like, it's in terms of that, that's when you mentioned at the beginning that wild man aspect. I think we do see some of that, where these occult and underworld things don't faze him at all, but he gets a taste of material wealth, and suddenly he's, I want your tinderbox too. I have touched money, where previously nothing fazed him. And it is interesting too that the keys are already in the door in what amounts to the underworld. There is something almost Hecate-like with that, or that idea of all these, like, the more we talk about it, the more underworld elements really start kind of bubbling up from it.
I think that's such a great point, the three keys. In the similar story by the Brothers Grimm, the witch has him descend to a well, but same idea. He's going down into the earth, and instead of a tinderbox, he needs to bring her back a blue flame from within the earth. And that tickles my imagination so much. In the practice of traditional witchcraft, as I was taught it, we work with combining the fire from within the earth and the fire from the stars. And I've definitely heard people describe the fire of the underworld as either blue flame or green flame. And that used to be a superstition, from what I understand. There was a superstition about witchcraft or magic in general, like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, as he's riding up to the castle on Walpurgis Night, he passes blue flames that indicate treasure has been buried beneath them and concealed by magic. Both the well and the hollow tree are common entrances into the underworld as well. And AB, like you mentioned, if we go through many spirit catalogs or demonic grimoires, it was very common to have a description that many of them will be useful to aid us finding treasures within the earth. We'll probably return to this more later, but that does give me another way to think about these strange appearing dogs that are down there, indicating where the treasure is.
It is very interesting that when we have the three dogs, and especially because I don't, this is obviously your field of expertise, not mine, but in terms of like how influenced by mythology are fairy tales?
Oh, heavily. Yeah, heavily.
Do we see an impact there?
Definitely.
Okay, because if we're going into the underworld and there are three dogs, at least three dog heads,
yes,
there is sort of that Kerberos aspect to it.
Yes, exactly. Plus, are you guys telling me my crystal pyramid is not going to make me rich?
Put it in your foreskin.
Did I blow $400 on this?
Oh, like as long as it's the $400 one, that's okay.
This is totally plastic.
Oh yeah. I'm sure I have a pyramid around here somewhere. I think that somebody gave me as a souvenir. But I will, like the actual witchcraft that I do does not cost a lot of money. It's sometimes it's whatever I can find in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But I do have a weakness for the kitschier side of witchcraft. It's just in terms of home decor.
Totally. I'm going to play grimoire apologist for the moment.
Oh boy.
And say many of the modern and early Renaissance grimoires do give you backup clauses. So they may ask you to get fresh goat skin, but if you happen to have paper, that'll work too. Or they may tell you this list of ingredients is used to call a spirit, but you could choose from any of these other occult correspondences too, if you happen to have those on hand.
That is so Barefoot Contessa. I am obsessed with it.
That's literally what I was going to say. I was thinking about those recipes. Oh well, if you cannot buy this type of wine from Italy or whatever, you can do just fine from Walmart.
but I want to say, they get accused a lot, which I'm not going to go into now. But even like the Abramelin, it says you should have a white room, but you could also just go outside.
You could have a lakefront cabin, but hear me out.
There's a lot of backup clauses written into the text. Actually, my favorite about the Abramelin is that, oh my God, we're going so far off topic, but, and I'm supposed to be moderating.
Okay. It's me. It is my influence. I am the problem. It's me.
It's
I promise it's me.
My favorite clause in Abramelin is that as the process goes on, you should be spending increased amount of time in prayer and study of the Bible. Or if you're pagan, you just study that instead. So actually, you don't even have to do any of the Bible stuff.
Oh, well said, Abramelin. We're going to have to do a very special Storybook Witchcraft episode where we watch A Dark Song.
Oh, jeez.
Are you familiar? It is a British folk horror movie about modern practitioners performing the entire Abramelin ritual. It is amazing.
I haven't seen it yet, but if we do that, I'm going to make you read the book.
I have a copy somewhere, or I did at some point. I bought it when I was a very new baby witch. It was like Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner and The Secret Magic of Abramelin the Mage. And one struck me as a little over my head.
Mathers?
So I set that one aside.
Okay, jumping back to the text.
I was going to add real quick, just in terms of the substitutions. When I wrote Virgo Witch, I had to write, this is part of a series of books, of astrological books. And so I had to write 2 Virgos. And so, being a Virgo myself, I just was like, how would I react if I was reading a spell in a book? So and there was a little money spell. It was like, because we all want to do money spells for other people. We never want to do them for ourselves. We're going to do a spell for ourselves. I was like, you need a dime. It could be a Mercury dime. That's great. It does not have to be. Read this again. It can be a dime. It's just a regular. It's fine. It's fine. Because I was like, some Virgo is going to read this and be like, I can't find a Mercury dime. I'm clearly going to burn in hell.
Yeah, I don't have one.
Because the Virgo Witch book said Mercury dime and I don't have one. So I was like, we're fixing that right now.
Yeah.
And,
that's great.
But anyway, fairy tales.
When the soldier is down on his luck, he's given away all his money and partied it up a little bit. He's made a lot of fair weather friends who then, when he doesn't look so rich anymore, don't recognize him, surprisingly. He's hanging out at home and he decides, I think I have a candle in that tinderbox. Maybe I could at least smoke some tobacco or light my room. So he opens up the box, strikes a flint, and the first dog with eyes as large as saucers appears. So he actually summoned a being from the underworld. I love this.
And the dog speaks.
The dog asks him, like, what do you command? Not just with the 1001 Nights. This is also shared with the Grimm tale. The blue light that the soldier finds, if he ever uses it to smoke a pipe, it pulls in an earth gnome who will grant his wishes and ask him what he commands. I've never read this tale before either.
Oh, wow.
And I'd heard of it. The only thing I'd ever thought, though, about it was that it's the same name as the Susie and the Banshees album, Tinderbox.
Susie was up on her folktales.
A tinderbox is where you would put your kindling and maybe your pipe and tobacco and things like that. And so I think it's really interesting that this connection in both tales with the pipe smoking and the striking of the flame and the spirit servitor that comes from either the earth or the underworld.
Very happy to be there. Like there is no, especially comparing it to something ceremonial or something involving like demonolatry, this idea of who dare summon me. The dog's just like, oh, it's you. Hey, what's up?
Yeah, they're very willing.
I'm here to help. Like the dogs are as unfazed as he is by all of it.
I do have to say that I do not see in the version that I read the pipe connotation. on the version that I read, which is actually well, the one that you share, Aaron. Um, that's why I was thinking, where does the pipe is mentioned in this one? He's just like in a very old cabin type of situation, and it seems like it was dark, and he doesn't have a candle. He doesn't even have a candle to illuminate the bed, the room where he's
Yeah.
in. So he pulls a tinderbox, because typically the tinderbox have like what is the word in like like a little piece of candle stock or something like that, and that's where the dog comes in. Which funny, he immediately say, "What orders, master?" What I do have to say is also, again, circling back on this element of the soldier is not surprised, nor he's not surprised by this big animal appearing out of nowhere or saying, "Hey, what do you want?" He's more like, "Well, I don't have money. Can you bring me some money?" So I do
Yeah.
find that very, very interesting. Um, for me, it was more the element of he always had that tinderbox, and nor even once since he left that tree with all that amount of gold, he was nor in need. He chopped the witch's head. And he didn't even, and he was like, "Well, I have the checker apron and the gold. I don't care, and also I have the tinderbox. I don't know what it is, but I don't care. I'm not going to check it." He just checked it at the very end, at the very last time, at the very last moment, which I did find very interesting. For some reason, it was like, okay. I do see this aspect of just like the comparison of the dog and the genie, as in Aladdin, but also if we keep seeing like the motive element, he went to the underworld, he returned, he has a familiar. He went to the underworld, he sacrificed something,
Yeah.
he's a witch. And if we assume that he's a witch, we also see the trials and tribulations with that any witch can go through. He had moment of riches, a moment of, not only witches, like any human being. We have great moments with a lot of money and prosperity and happiness, and moments full of difficulties and strife and pain. And if anything,
Yeah.
obviously the freaking dog is bringing him money, but at the same time, it's also when we go through this moment of trial and we do a spell and, oh wow, magic is real, it worked. It's also it brings that to mind as well.
Yeah.
So that's what impacted me in that section.
There is, and there's also one thing I did kind of notice in the throughout the story is there is a bit of misogyny through the whole thing, where the witch is very sexual, but she's also very ugly. And then when we get into the princess is kind of an airhead, and when there are smart women, bad things happen to them. So in keeping with that, it sort of makes sense that even though the tinderbox is tied to the dogs and the tinderbox belonged to the witch and it was a gift from her mother, the dogs don't care. They're like, it's just they respond to who owns the tinderbox versus, hey, you killed that lady. That's not okay. We don't want to work for you. They're like, hey, you're the new guy. Great.
When I went through a magical training in the Gay Men's Mystery School in Chicago, we did go through goetic practices, but this was before the whole grimoire renaissance that's happening and the true grimoire revival that we're sort of on the tail end of now, where people are trying to get as close as possible to the practices as they are written in the book.
Yeah.
Before that were some other popular authors like Franz Bardon and Poke Runyon, who is still practicing, and Joseph Luzuski. And the practices that I studied at the time were more developed from them. And one of the elements was how the first time you either go to the spirit or you create a welcoming environment for them through something like Bardon's elemental breathing and correspondences and things like that. But you're making a hospitable environment for them. And you still go through all the rigmarole of the long evocations, the threatening and the binding, only the first time, because once you've called them, you could ask them to appear beneficial in their true form. You make the pact, and then they can communicate with you at will or through a much easier means that you two agree on, such as striking a flint in this tale. But he did go through the work the first time. He descends all the way to the underworld. He made the connection. He got to hug them and move them to their blankie.
Put them on their binky.
As AB pointed out, he did make a sacrifice. And now they have this connection, even though he wasn't necessarily the first one to connect them to the tinderbox. I don't necessarily work through that same system anymore, but that was one that I was very familiar with, and I think there's something to be gained through those methods and through through the Grimoire Purist methods that followed. And there's a connection later between the tinderbox and the pipe smoking when we hear the soldier tell the king, "Grant me one favor, let me smoke my pipe before I'm executed." And the king does let him.
Yeah.
Says, you can smoke 3 pipes if you want, but you're still going to be executed. And so when the soldier goes to light his pipe, he summons all 3 dogs. And I think they kill everyone. I'm not sure.
They kill everyone. And it's a whole thing where he ultimately got arrested and was sentenced to death because he kept kidnapping the king's daughter. He didn't kidnap her once. He was kidnapping her every night and sending one of the dogs to go get her. And she, the first night, or after the first night, she was like, I had the weirdest dream that I was riding on the back of a dog and a soldier kissed me. And everyone was like, oh, you and your stories. But like one serving woman was like, no, I know what's going on. And put on her boots and ran after the dog. Marked the door with the white cross. The dog saw it and marked every door in the neighborhood with white crosses so they couldn't find him. But he kept doing that. And he kept sending the dogs to bring the princess because he didn't even know what she looked like. He heard she was pretty. And so that was enough for him to engage in kidnapping. And it was when the queen tied a sack of flour to the girl's back, a tiny bag that left the trail to the house, which is how they were able to catch him. And it was interesting to me because this is where we start seeing women in the story being very, very cunning and outsmarting him. And we think, oh, okay. And then so it's sort of like he's going to get executed because, be careful what you wish for. With great power comes great responsibility. And like you said, he's like, I just need to smoke my pipe. And he summons the dogs, and the dogs throw all the soldiers and the judge and the council high in the air, and they break into bits when they land. And the king and the queen are like, no, wait. And so then they kill the king and the queen. And the princess is like, I'll marry you.
Don't kill me.
Yeah. It was like, the way it was phrased, it was very shady. It was, so all the people after the massacre, all the people were like, why don't you be king? Because they didn't want to be next. And they said, soldier, be our king and marry the pretty princess. So they put the soldier in the king's carriage. All 3 of his dogs danced in front of it and shouted, hurrah. And the princess came out of the castle to be queen, and that suited her exactly. So she just was like, okay, why not?
Yeah, she wants to be queen.
Yeah,
it was very pleasing to her. Now, also, Aaron, Jude, the pipe aspect, I do see it. Obviously, it does appear at the end. Actually, you and I were talking earlier about the whole the tobacco usage and all of that. And at least in South America, tobacco is a very common offering for the ancestors and pretty much any spirit. But the way that I know it, I do not typically do it, but the way that I do it, I've seen it in Venezuela, is that people buy like a good, very expensive tobacco, like a cigar, and place it in the altar as an offering for a particular ancestor, or light it and like blow the smoke towards the altar, or towards the spirit that you are looking to give an offering to. So it's very interesting, the tobacco aspect. Of course, I do think that here in this particular section is the cunning aspect of, I just need the tinderbox.
Yeah.
I want to smoke pipe, like, please, before I die. But it was not like, hey, I need my familiars. Hello.
Well, that was part of it as well. Is in this particular kingdom, the condemned gets one final request, and they have to honor it, no matter what. And so that's why he was able to do it, because that's the rules. You get whatever you want.
One funny thing, and I'm not justifying anything. Obviously, I do think that the princess was looking like to get an out of, because she was in that castle. No one was able to be she was not being seen by anyone.
Right.
The king didn't want her like to marry anyone. I'm going to put you in this castle with a dragon around you type of situation. So again, the whole moral ethic conversation here is kind of weird. This is a more an anti-hero type of situation. But for her, it was it's funny that the story says that for the princess, it was very pleasing. It was very pleasing to her to get married with this dude. And in the wedding festivities that lasted a whole week, 7 days, which again, we're seeing the motive of the number 3, we're seeing the element of the number 7, which I find interesting too. The dogs sat at the table and they stared with all their eyes.
Yeah.
And again, staring everyone.
In the translation that I read, it said, their eyes opened even wider than before.
Even wider than before.
But in terms of that protection element that we've been talking about, that would make sense. That the dogs are clearly happy with the arrangement, but they are now offering even more protection. And there was a prophecy. I forgot about the prophecy. Aaron, do you remember the prophecy?
There was a prophecy.
The reason...
So the king was told that his daughter would marry a nobody or a soldier.
A soldier. He would marry a common soldier.
Yeah,
and so that's why he had her locked up. So that's that. Maybe I was reading it as the princess was sort of depicted as sort of vapid, but in retrospect, I'm like, oh no, she just wanted out. She wanted the prophecy.
She wanted an out. Yeah. I was definitely seeing that aspect of, she's in a tower. As soon as she see any man, she's be like, get me out of here. But it did take a darker turn at the end with the dogs like, this is our king. We are free. We are not in the underworld anymore. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Like anyone that is trying to take his power. It was that element. I do also, I like to notice the stroking aspect of the striking. I apologize. The striking aspect of the Tinder. I was saying stroking. Hey, hello.
That was at the beginning. That was at the beginning of the
story.
And I will say it again. Stroking. At the striking aspect of the Tinder box. Hey, listen. Second language here. I'm sorry.
You're doing great.
What to say? I am trying to. Now I will say stroking on purpose. It does remind me also of the drumming, sometimes to go into the underworld or maybe to go into a trance or to call a spirit. That and that. I just throw that out there.
And when you were talking about offerings, something that kind of popped out to me is that this is going to sound like a tangent, but I promise I have a point. I saw something on Tumblr or something one time where people were like, what movie tropes make you crazy? What are things that we think are...
Tumblr.
Well, like things that we think are historically accurate that actually aren't. And somebody was like, I hate it when it's like a medieval hall or something, or like the witch's cottage, and it's full of candles. Candles were a valuable resource, and they were scarce, and they were hard to make. So there was just that little stub of candle in the tinderbox. So when we talk about sacrifice, like burning a candle for a spirit would have been a huge sacrifice back then. You're giving up something that's very valuable and very needed, and literally sacrificing that for the benefit of the spirit. So he really was making that sacrifice as well.
That also takes me to the whole conversation of in the past, like the whole witchcraft aspect. These people now that we need 40 candles of each different color for the spell to work. Like, darling, the same candle was used for everything.
Yeah.
If there was a candle being used, like, oh no, the energy is going to contaminate the candle. No, no, girl. The candle that was used to hex is the same candle that was used to bless. Don't believe in that crap.
That is my whole thing right now. Is when writing about magic, or especially candle magic, I will say things like, "So get yourself a candle-colored candle,
Candle-colored candle,
and go from there." Like, it's first rule of fashion: beige goes with everything, right? Like, because we think of colored candles being this very traditional thing, and I've seen epic arguments over you can't use a blue candle for that; it has to be a green candle. Up until the 1930s, they were literally candle colored. It wasn't until the introduction of paraffin wax that
Right.
anybody thought, hey, we can make these purple. And so it's funny to me when people have those arguments, but at the same time, that does resonate within the tale of taking the very last bit of something and using that and unwittingly making a sacrifice.
I love that you guys pointed out the princess in a tower trope of the story, and Thumper, how misogynistic elements of the story are. And to go, I guess, drag a little more on the grimoires, that is the type of magic that he does here is very much in many of the grimoires and in the Greek magical papyri. But in Grimoire Verum, there's spells like to make a girl dance pleasing for you. In the Book of Oberon, there's a spell to bring like fairy maidens to your bedside at night, just to visit, just to talk. And that one he really does do. He brings her to the bedside at night. And so that's a really accurate portrayal of the type of magic that would have been going on.
Well, even in folk magic, in the Gospel of Aradia, there's a spell to summon the Red Goblin, and you have to you have to find a particular stone, and the stone sort of has to come to you. And if you find this particular, it has to be a perfectly round stone. And if you find the stone, then you say this prayer to the Red Goblin, and the Red Goblin inhabits the stone. But you can send, the Red Goblin will run errands for you, or it'll kidnap a girl for the night.
Love it.
And if she doesn't want, and it's very if my girlfriend does not want to come to me, then the Red Goblin will pull her hair and maybe smack her around a little bit and kind of aggressively convince her where she needs to go. And it's very much in the grimoires, but also a lot of folk magic is very how to make him love me.
But will the Red Goblin track down a Wolfie man for me or not? So actually,
from the chaos magic aspect, I have not. I will ask through a weird series of events, I was able to perform the Red Goblin ritual. And I have not asked the Red Goblin to bring me anyone. Because Bell Book and Candle, I wonder if I could get him without tricks. I don't want the Red Goblin to drag somebody into my house and then I have to be like, well, since you're here, who wants to snuggle, right? No, that's bad.
However, I'm getting married next week.
I will check in with the Red Goblin and see if he can deliver Woofy Man.
And then I am the problem because I say stroke the tinderbox song. Hello. I have no problems with that. We've already said it's sexual.
I wrote a blog post about this once. I wrote a blog post about this, so I don't mind telling the story about the Red Goblin. But right before I went to Mystic South, not this past year, but the year before, I was doing a presentation on Lissamantic divination, but I was taking a very chaos magic approach to it. And so it was Lissamancy, but I was using gaming dice as the quote stones. And I was defining stones as small objects roughly the same size and shape of the same material, that we can be very broad with how we define it. And just since I was traveling, a friend of mine had said, you don't have to say the prayer to the Red Goblin when you find the stone. You can say the prayer in advance to find the stone. And then you say it again when you do find the stone. You can ask the Red Goblin to give you the stone that you need to summon the Red Goblin. So I was like, okay, that sounds fine. So the Tuesday before I left for Mystic South, I did this little Red Goblin ritual. And I got my Aradia out and did the text, did the reading, and went then did this presentation using gaming dice as stones. And I was traveling with a friend. So after we left Atlanta for Mystic South, we went to Blue Ridge to visit his family. And his cousin, who's not really his cousin, it's like friend of the family who he was raised with. So they're cousins because it's the South. Yeah. And so his cousin took us to this building he was renovating. And we walked in and some floorboards had been pulled up and there was a 20-sided die wedged under them. And it was a Tuesday. It was a week, Tuesday to Tuesday. It was a green and blue 20-sided die, but it was still a 20. It was still, I was like, that is a round freaking stone in terms of how I have spent the week defining stones. So that is my red goblin. I have this acrylic 20-sided die that I carry around. And that's my red goblin.
That is amazing. I love that story.
Yes.
That is incredible.
AB and I just had a discussion about this Hecatean ritual and how not my original idea, but Jack Rail said the ritual is that you go to a crossroads and you find a shard left over there from pottery or a plate. People used to leave offerings to her at the crossroads, right. So it wouldn't have been unusual to find a shard there. But now maybe it would be. So walk by earlier that day, break a plate, go home, and then come back later in the night.
Yeah,
find a shard.
I will admit to when the spell says leave the offerings in the crossroads, sometimes that means tossing something out of my car window while going through a four-way stop.
Sure.
Like, we work with what we have.
Yeah, we do what we can.
Doreen Valiente once said something about when she was writing about divination, about she was doing something with a table at the table. And she was like, yes, I know a table. I'm practicing witchcraft at the table. We have tables. Get over it. Like, she was very like,
nice.
This is the modern era and we can use tables. So we can use those things that are at our disposal.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. In the attempts to counteract or at least discover who is behind the magical abductions, the nurse or the maid that you mentioned earlier, she draws the chalk X's or crosses on the magician's door, but like you said, man's best friend goes and writes them on all the other doors. I still think that the chalk X is an interesting symbol. And then when that since that didn't work, she devises a bag or a silk bag and pokes a hole in it and fills it with flour so that they can follow the trail left by the flower to the house that she's been abducted to. I really like that as well. I've been, in some traditional circle castings, you might draw a circle or one of the circles in like a meal or a flower. And I usually kind of walk around as if I'm scattering seed. And so it's not a visible circle, but I do think there are times where the visible circle is probably important, and especially drawing like the seal or sigil of a spirit if you're working on the ground, and I'm usually working outside, and that's pretty difficult, and I'm like doing it by hand, and I'm thinking, okay, are they really going to recognize that? Are they really going to recognize this little blob on this side of it? But the bag with a hole poked in it actually might work really well.
It's very much like piping frosting almost. It's just that keeps the even line. That would work.
My mom was actually just earlier today. My mom was showing me these designs that she saw in southern India, where every day, I guess, in the morning, in the night or in the morning, but the women go outside their front door, they wash down the stone in front of the door, and then they draw an elaborate design in chalk mixed with, I forgot. I don't think it's flour, but something round and white, and it's mixed with chalk, and they draw these elaborate designs with them, and they're just sprinkling it out of their fingers, but the lines are so tight and the drawings are so elaborate. But yeah, for me, I think I might need a bag with a hole in it, to draw the lines.
That's going to be the most entertaining trip to Williams-Sonoma ever.
And then add a little sugar dust afterwards to receive.
Yeah, we're going to sift it through.
Make sure there's no lumps.
I had an ex of mine worked at Williams Sonoma for a while, and so we were always getting random discounts or free stuff. So I have a lot of Williams Sonoma witchcraft, like not tons, but like a couple of candle holders here and there, maybe an offering bowl. That's like I got for a couple of bucks, but like you see it in the catalog, and I'm like, ooh, my spirits get fancy stuff.
And you guys are talking to me about the barefoot Contessa over here. We'll add Kitchen Witch to your bio.
That works. I am absolutely ever that. I can't cook it all, but I
You can do some spells.
You want to make dinner? No, I can summon a demon.
For me.
So let me get in the kitchen for about 20 minutes. Let me see who shows up, and then we'll order a pizza.
Love that.
Red Goblin, I don't need a young maiden, but can you run through the drive-thru?
Yeah. I need Raising Cane's immediately. All is forgiven. All debts paid. Go get me some chicken.
Are there any things about this tale or magic in general that you were hoping to speak about tonight that we haven't yet?
I think we've covered everything that I could think to say about it. I'm less afraid of the dogs than I was as a kid.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And I will get a picture. I will dig out that book and send you a picture of the dogs.
I would love that. Yeah, I would love that.
Haunts my dreams.
The Wikipedia for this tale has a very Van Gogh style painting of a fairy tale princess riding one of the dogs. It's really beautiful, actually.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
They're very, I think I remembered that they're almost like pug-esque in a way, just with the idea of the bulging eyes.
Yeah, this one is. I've seen a line sketch one. So this is like kind of funny too. The day you were telling me about the story, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Enchanted Booklet or one of the Instagram accounts that usually posts beautiful illustrations posted an illustration from the story of more like a greyhound or something like that. But, like really skinny and long, but then just big bulging eyes.
Oh, wow. So you were destined to do this particular episode.
Yeah. It was really fun. I was like, wait a minute, that's the same story. AB, how about yourself? Were there elements of the story that we haven't talked about yet?
I do think that we did touch on everything. I think that the major emphasis that I wanted to go over is the underworld travel. I do think that we do get to see in the underworld travel the motifs of the tree door with the three keys, three dogs, three chests, three treasures. Also, the idea that maybe that's what matches for me. I see these concepts of familiars just being animals, but he had the opportunity to call on them just by stroking a tinderbox. No, striking.
Yeah. Like, that was just a big build up to say
my god. No, I just wanted to repeat that word again. No, I think that we get to see this element of I do find this element of witchcraft there, and re-emphasizing he passed his trial, he moved the dogs, he was not scared of them, they came to do his bidding what he needed them to. The whole element of the princess asleep in the back of the dogs and the dogs just moving without her waking up, it's kind of interesting. Such a summoning element, I don't know, it's so interesting. The way that the entire kingdom was like, well, you should be our king, we don't want to fucking die by the mouths of these giant dogs. Sure.
I picture that as like everybody staring at like the broken and bloodied bodies of the king and his retinue, and then they're just like, hooray, you're king now, as they're all slowly backing away from him.
Yeah, no, but I really I think that the biggest aspect is that this soldier was fully ready to do whatever he had to do from the very beginning. He was returning from war. He saw that I think that's what it ranks. It ranked for me. he saw pain. He was most likely penniless, as the most part of those people that end up going to war. Yeah, he was in need of help, and he got the help, and he did what he had to do. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely, there's yeah, that I did not enjoy the fact that he like killed the witch. I did not enjoy the fact that how everything moved on that moral aspect. It was interesting for me to see how he gave money to everyone, and he was like, "Cool, yeah." But yeah, I do think that we did touch on all the topics, on all the different
And
elements. Yeah.
the one last thing I want to add is at the very beginning you talked about the idea of the wild man. And when we think about it, as the soldier, like he's coming from somewhere else, he's moving into civilization, and the idea of this prophecy that the princess is going to marry a soldier is very like going to marry somebody uncivilized, but he communicates with the dogs. He has the animals on his side, so it's him and the animals having this brutally crimson demise of everyone. But it is that wild man and those wild things taking over.
Yeah.
That do win in the end.
I mean, the third and the second dog were somewhat gigantic. If the eyes of one dog were the size of a tower, the dog was gigantic. Like, we're not talking of a small feat at all.
In my head, they're still normal sized dogs with just these freakishly large eyes, though.
Yeah.
They're very top heavy. They're very
yeah. Which also it brings to that's also, I thought that he definitely went to the underworld, because how did it make sense for him to have the strength to move such a huge animals with no effort whatsoever? He was more like, okay, come here, Fido.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. There is sort of, and even just the lopping the head off with one blow, like there is preternatural strength there. That's sort of implied in his character.
That brings up a question I had, even, is if we're reading the dogs to be big enough to match the size of their eyes, or are they just normal sized dogs and then these eyes?
I always just thought they were like regular sized dogs with these huge eyes, like big enough to carry a princess on your back.
Yeah,
right. Or slightly big.
I was thinking that at least
big,
the smaller one was big enough to scare. The second one was like, okay, horse size. And the third one was like, okay, this is a freaking giant. I was thinking that definitely has to be big enough for the princess to be asleep and model like, oh yeah, I'm asleep, move me, carry me, like, like.
But big eyes in general, big eyes are, when we think of like animals that have eye-like patterns in their feathers or fur or scales, because it creates the image that they're larger than they actually are. That's one of the ways that they defend themselves against predators. And I have a whole theory, like I've not researched this at all. I do not have a degree in anything related to this, but part of the idea of the evil eye is that same effect. It's the creation of the suggestion of something bigger than we are in order to scare away anything smaller.
Yeah. I thought about how angels are, said to have five, this angel has 500 eyes, this angel has 1,500 eyes. But they definitely show, they can be intimidating, but also show emotion.
So these are biblically accurate.
Yeah. Yes, these are biblically accurate dogs. He definitely does visit the underworld. I mean, he uses an entrance to the underworld, literally, and then it follows that pattern of the hero's journey, the descent and the return, and especially the fact that he's a soldier. And I think what is often now called the hero's journey is related to these warrior cultures where the quote hero is defined by battle, and eventually is either alone or finds the princess or the wife that symbolizes the attainment of the new home. What is a way that we could use this tale to inform an aspect of our own magical practice or spellcraft? And I can cut in the Jeopardy music while we think about that.
I already have an answer.
Yes, go for it.
and it's completely inspired by something AB was talking about. You know, the soldier, when he approaches this magical environment, these magical beings within that environment, he doesn't show fear. He is very confident. He is at one point making fun of the dogs, you know, but lightheartedly so. But he doesn't perceive them as a threat. And when he realizes that he can work with them to better himself, he does. One of my biggest pet peeves within the greater occult community is people practicing witchcraft while they are actively afraid of it. And I think, which is why we get, especially on social media, you know, the example I always go to is like, you know, so once you get your new tarot deck, make sure you consecrate it or demons will possess it. And I'm like, okay, Tammy Faye, thank you for letting me know. You know, when we approach these things with fear, we're going to get the results that we are afraid of, because that's where we're putting our desires. If I am casting a spell and all I'm thinking about is what could possibly go wrong, the intent of my spell is what can go wrong. And so I think for me, there's that good example of him just doing what he needs to do, and when encountering the occult, not being afraid of it, working with it.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree with that. I do think that he followed these indications as they were given to him. It's like at the time to get the tinderbox, he fully forgot. He was mesmerized by the gold. Understandably, honestly, but he was fully trusting on the protection that was given by the witch to him. Hey, this blue apron is going to protect you. Just put the fucking dog on top of the apron and you're going to be fine, dude. Don't worry about it. Which it definitely was interesting. For me, I do think that I already have had the opportunity to call my familiars, let's say it like that. And ironically, I think that was one of the reasons of why I was thinking on striking the tinderbox as a way to call it. One of the elements that I was adding to it was like knocking on a particular piece of wood that I have to call into them. So I do think that it would be interesting to see how to continue using that aspect of calling in addition to conjuring them by their name or lighting a candle. But I also was thinking more in regards of maybe going into that particular story. One of the I actually say always thanks to Frater Aaron because of these. I started reading my tarot decks and every single my cards every single time that I needed like a better explanation of why a card was pulled. I just do a meditation when I see myself traveling onto that card and ask the card, hey, okay, show me here in this story what's going on, what is the recommendation here given, and it has given me great results. I was thinking maybe on doing a meditation with a tree, but fully focusing on the tinderbox, maybe traveling to that space and seeing what the dogs had to show me. Who knows, just maybe utilizing a blue shirt just in case. Like, hey, bro, we good here. But I
a gingham dress. A gingham dress.
We need to go out for Halloween wearing blue checkered shirts. And
we need more.
Blue checkered apron.
We need more men wearing maid dresses, and I'm okay for that. And that's all what I'm going to say. No, but I was more than a spell. I was thinking on. I want to ask these dogs what was all this about. I really am interested into that. So maybe we're going to be doing a meditation on that side. We'll see.
Oh, a journey to meet the dogs.
Yeah.
I am down for that.
I'm one of these, like, I don't know, I think this is a very USA thing, but, you know, I see any animal and I'm like,
that is,
so...
you know, there's a little white woman in all of us. And I have the same, if not friend, then why friendship?
So I'm going to...
Yeah.
Right.
I actually shared something along those lines of Facebook once. Like I am 100% sure that I will go to a tiger and it will not attack me because it will feel my wonderful vibes and it would let me pet it.
Yeah.
And I know that it's going to be my demise.
I'm sure.
When I was in high school, I worked at a veterinary clinic, and there were some of our patients were marked as fractious, which meant they were unpredictable and bitey, right? And for whatever reason, the worst one was a little Yorkie, a Yorkshire Terrier, who was mean as the day is long.
Oh, God.
And there were notes on his cage, do not approach. And I would open his cage and he would leap into my arms and we would cuddle. And then like he would attack the other technicians while I was holding him. And so because of that little 3-pound dog, I'm like, the bear will love me. I choose the bear. Like, yeah, I'm going to get eaten in the woods.
Well, I mean, we always choose the bear, but
yes, but yeah, I will
wolf,
absolutely die in the woods trying to catch something. I'm fully aware of this.
I don't remember if I said this earlier. So, the tinderbox, you're right. He doesn't think to look into it till he's pretty destitute. And it is like how oftentimes, especially with money magic, it's the thing we fall on, like when we are when things are pretty dire. And it's one of our last resorts. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. Of course, that makes it easier to build up a lot of passion in doing the work. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. So I think that is something to remember. And then I also had the thought specifically about the tinderbox, something that I think we brought up with the other Anderson tale that AB suggested, which is that if you begin working with specifically a familiar, it will often need a home. And then even in Solomonic working, you do have like the brass container. You do have a spirit house where you'll keep relics of this underworld chthonic spirit that you're working with. And I see the tinderbox itself as that. So I think my final advice for working with this tale in our practice is do some Goetia. Like don't be put off by how maybe classist or difficult the grimoires are. Take the trip into the underworld. Check out these spirit catalogs. Look for those clues about how you can make these work in a more earth-based and practical craft.
Yeah, get your 40 candles,
try them out.
Colors, 17 different type of herbs and incenses.
Get your 40 candles. No, you just get that. You get that one glass encased candle that has all the colors.
Even better, you get the glass encased candle that is reloadable. So you burn down the one candle, and then you still have the glass, and then you just put in the new pillar
and
candle.
You just put in the new pillar. Yeah. No, a lot of the grimoires don't even mention candles. In all honesty, so like Abramelin does talk about oil lamps, but most of the grimoires don't even talk about candles. Although they do have conjurations for fire. I really appreciated the information that both of you gave about your practice and suggestions for working with this tale. I think that was a lot of helpful information. Is there anything else you would like to let people know about your work or what you have available?
Well, currently it is Virgo Witch, and then the blog, which is Patios. If you go to patios.com/blogs/fivefold law, I will pop up, and there's usually something good there. You can always follow me on TikTok, because if I'm gonna like curse a lot and do something completely obscene, it's gonna be there. I have I shouldn't. I am far too old and grizzled and curmudgeonly to be on the TikTok, but for some reason I have a following there, and I think that's actually where I met AB originally, was through TikTok. But I do the funny dances and the lip syncs, and then like that's one day, and the next day I'm just like, okay, so here's what's pissing me off about the witches on this app, and then I go off on a big tangent. So it's unpredictable. You never know what's going to fly out of my mouth. I would suggest everybody follow me there just to see the train wreck and see the train wreck in real time.
How about what?
Yeah,
do you
I
offer services?
mentioned doing readings earlier, and I still offer those. Lithomantic readings, which is divination with 13 stones. When I'm doing the readings, like in person, I actually use stones. I don't go
Okay.
like, okay, we'll ask the plastic gaming dice what the future holds. Because, there is a certain theater to these things. But I actually have, if you go to fivefoldlaw.etsy.com, I've got a little Etsy, you can book readings through there. In town, there is a little shop called Pixie's Intent that does an event called Psychic Sundays. And I'm on the roster. So every few Sundays I pop up and do readings there as well.
And can you bring my man's back?
Bring your man's back? I can try. We want to get the Red Goblin involved? We're going to get you a man?
I mean, like, will you be able to tell me if he still loves me?
I will chat with the Red Goblin tonight.
Girl,
because
bye.
it is a die, so I can't use it for divination.
I don't know what's happening. These discussions have never been this silly, but I'm just trying to give you like annoying tarot reader questions.
Oh, you're what we call the jump scare client. That is my new term. The jump scare client is the one who says, I just want a general reading about love or career. And you're like, okay. And then literally it's like I had this perfectly lovely client. We asked the money questions. We asked the love questions. And then I've got an upcoming court date. And I was like, oh yeah, it's not gonna go that well, but you're gonna be fine. And I was like, it's not like you have a warrant. She's like, oh no, I have a warrant. Am I going to jail? And literally the tarot reader in the booth next to me stopped shuffling. And I was like, why don't we lead with this next time? Yeah.
She had to make sure you were good first before she started.
That's what they do. They poke at you a little bit. And they're like, okay, you seem legit. How much prison time am I looking at? Will they find all the bodies or just the one in the creek? Like, and I'm just like, I am throwing stones on the table, my friend. Like, you need more help than I can provide.
You need a lawyer.
But definitely come
That's what you need.
Yeah.
AB, you were shaking your head, and I couldn't figure out if you were judging me or the theoretical client he was talking about.
Listen, I'm just judging everyone here, including myself.
Fair game. Fair game.
Especially myself.
How about AB? Do you offer services? Do you have things you would like people to contact you about?
Oh God, no! I wish I did. Like, that would be awesome. No, in reality, no. I do have to say that I have fall out of my social media game for a while. It's been. We get busy. Life is complex, and I admire my fellow social media content creators that have a full-time job, a life, and create content, edit it. It looks amazing. Like, bless your soul. Not this individual, but we are trying to reel back in. Hopefully, I'm going to create content more often. There might be some opportunities for a class that I'm translating for Sarah Mastros and to teach it in Spanish. So I'm working on that. But yeah, it's just trying to reel on all of that. But as I always say, I'm definitely interested in connecting with people that is practicing witchcraft, beginners to try to share some resources, and people that is more advanced than me to learn from them. This is something that I do enjoy. I am definitely present to connect with practitioners, talk about witchcraft, complain about men, and just push forward. Why not?
Aaron, next time I'm doing readings in person, why don't you be my plant and you show up and loudly ask really horrifying questions? So when the next person comes in, I can be like, I hope that's done for the day. And they'll be like, I really just want to know about money. I'm done. That's fine. Here's cash. Keep it.
No, I won't be asking like, do you have a lawyer? Are we going to ask questions that are going to take us or not to jail? Like, please.
I have had a few readings that are like, they ask the question and I'm looking at the little stones and they're like, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to meditate for a second. And it's really like okay, that's information they didn't ask and they don't get.
Mm.
Oh,
You know,
I think she likes me, but she doesn't call. That's because
yeah,
she doesn't like you, but that wasn't the question.
yeah. You know what? I have experienced that. I'm not going to pretend that I sell like tarot readings. I do readings for friends and people closer to me as a way to keep, improving my skills. But it's challenging. It's challenging first as you as a human when you see like, hey, stop calling. They don't care. They don't want you. Move on.
Yeah.
And also, but this works when the cards say so, and you don't have any type of information whatsoever. Like, why are you there? Why are you in that relationship with that person? It's complex.
Yeah.
I admire you people that like you practitioners that offer divination, because sometimes
I learned early on, though,
Yeah.
like, I find love. The stones say you're going to die alone. I didn't say that. I'm just the messenger. The stones said that, or how much prison time? Well, according to the tarot, you're looking at 50 to life or whatever, but it's like, I always blame the tool, never myself. I'm always like, this is what this is saying. Your fate is in your own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never wanted to be like, but you said, no, I didn't. That rock said it. You believe the rock.
Anyway, so it's $20. Thank you.
Cash up front.
There might be more information if you do want to pay more, but
I will say some of the readings that I've done that have been like really right, like when I do readings online, I do a PDF with pictures and everything, so I can prove to them that I actually did something,
Okay.
right? And some of the ones that I thought were the most horrifying, where I was like, if I got that reading, I'd be furious, And those are the clients who come back.
Wow.
Because at least because they feel like I was honest with them, which I was.
Yeah.
But they would rather. I appreciate clients who would rather get bad, honest news than pay extra. Just maybe I'll put an extra thing on my website, like $40 will get you a reading, $80 will get you a nice one. I'll put the stones down myself.
All the bad cards.
Yeah.
Bad cards quotes.
Yeah. This reading is just one stone. Yes, it's Jupiter. It's very favorable. Who needs money magic? I'm going to retire from that.
Yeah. People like what's easy. I will say that. People like what's easy. I think we've come to the end of our discussion. This is going to be a really interesting.
I'm both saddened and relieved. Yes. We have faith in you. We know that you will do a wonderful job.
Of course. Thank you. Until next time, may all your travels be filled with wonder.